I tend to make a lot more progress when I don't have a choice. And it was the best feeling of my life. Take a shot every time I say freaked me out. I just like watched one of Gabby's videos and I remember her saying take a shot every time I say freaked out. Also, sorry if the lighting or the camera angles off or whatever. I tried my best to make it better than it was last time. Maybe I'm in the middle this time, maybe I'm not. We will find out. Hello and welcome back to another video. As I'm sure you know, I do a video every other week where I talk about my knee journey and my anxiety with it and recovering and learning how to walk again. So I have a series playlist thing on my channel that I will probably link below and at the end of this video if you would like to watch the rest if you haven't seen it before. What I'm talking about in this video is essentially my long-term knee recovery, getting walking again after the operations, more independence. As always, it was super slow getting there because my anxiety always held me back. For me to get anywhere, I would have to have my mom at least with me. And even then, it was really hard to transition between having two people to one person in a cane because a cane is not as sturdy at all as two people are, even though I could rely on it more because I had the control over it. I became independent enough over the summer so that I could use this new scooter we bought for grade 11 starting back in the fall of 2016 at school. This scooter was a big help in my independence, and although I hadn't fully learned to walk yet, I could at least walk enough to like park it beside a desk or go into the bathroom stalls, and eventually I started parking it like outside of the bathroom stalls, so I would force myself to have to walk in a little ways. However, as you would know, because I said it, I need things to hold on to. I didn't feel secure enough to be on my own and trust myself even with a walking stick. I needed people around me or very tight walls, which is why I started so small with like just going into a room. But I remember even when I had my scooter like in my math class, I couldn't park it on the opposite wall because there was too much of a space that I would have to walk across to get to the desk because open spaces scared me. Like, it seems like such a dumb thing to be afraid of, and I knew that at the time too. I ended up using this electric scooter for the whole grade 11 year and I think about 3 months of grade 12. At lunchtime, since it was kind of the break in the day where I could stand and eat my lunch, which is normally what I did, I parked it close enough to the wall that I could stand between the chair and the wall. So like I was enclosed, but I was still getting in my standing time, so I wasn't sitting all day long. Eventually I started moving, so I was a little more behind my scooter and like I was still holding onto it with my hand, but I wasn't like right against the wall, or I would just park it slightly further away. It's just such a tiny amount difference that it would throw me off and I'd be so anxious that I could only stand there for like a minute or something at a time, and then I'd have to sit down or move it closer to the wall. Or even just trying to picture myself without it to prepare me for eventually not having it, but that ended up just stressing me out more. Like, I really felt like I wouldn't be able to function without it, and like I would fall down and like my legs couldn't support me. That's probably the main problem I had, was balance. Like my legs were so weak because they barely had any muscle on them from just barely like recovering. I no longer knew how to regulate the pressure. And that's probably why open spaces affected me so much, because I felt like I couldn't trust myself to stand and like, you know, withhold my body weight against gravity, that I needed to have something else around me. Summer of 2017, I officially mastered outside walking because everything was free and open, yet I felt more grounded. Like, because there were no objects around, there was nothing I could do about it. Like, I have no idea. I cannot explain why I didn't feel comfortable in a hallway or like an empty room, but I was fine in like a large open space. Although it did take a while because there was a time when I started walking from like the car to the lake. I feel like it always kind of happens when I have this like sort of confident, like it's me challenging, it's me being an obnoxious asshole towards my anxiety. Like, hey, I don't care what you say, I'm gonna do it anyway. It's so funny because it always works out for the best. I got halfway and I verbally started freaking out. I'm like, oh my god, I can't do this. Like, I know I said I was gonna do this, but like I can't do this. Like, somebody come get me, please. And then I'm like, I'm going to finish walking here. So it felt like that really weird way where it had before, where I felt like my legs were nailed to the ground. Fun fact, I actually did a scratchboard art piece on that because it was such a prominent feeling in my life and I wanted to eventually represent how my knees felt to me somehow. I'll insert this here if I can find the picture. When all the anxiety hits me, it's like a sensory overload, and like I can't really breathe or pay attention to anything that's happening around me. Like I just can't figure out how to navigate this space because my anxiety is messing it up so much. It's almost like it's physically distorting the space around me. Long story short, I managed to walk across that freaky gap. It reminds me that like I can actually do it, so next time I'm like, oh no, but I don't want to and I don't feel like I can. Like I know I've done it before, so I can just do it and it's fine. Hills have always been harder for me. It feels absolutely impossible and like my anxiety is overwhelming. I didn't have the muscle in your legs that you have to climb up or down a hill because that works on different like tendons and muscles than it does to just like walk regularly, which I was hardly doing enough anyways, but so we did this thing where I kind of gave myself like smaller milestones to get to. You just have to get to that pine cone and then just a little further, like just get to that rock over there. But it was like I didn't think about the next step. I only thought about the ones I was literally taking at the time. And looking at that pine cone gave me something to focus on. So I'm like, okay, like just get there. That was just a way to kind of cut it into shorter chunks so I was more able to handle what was right in front of me rather than thinking about the huge hill. And at that point, I couldn't look ahead at the huge hill either. I had to look straight down at only my feet and the rocks. Whenever I felt like I had immense anxiety and I couldn't do it, I would push myself past that point here. I forgot about this, but I needed to stay closer to the side, especially when going down, even though the rocks were bigger and it was more unstable. That's how irrational my anxiety got. Like it would have been more dangerous for me to walk near the side of the road rather in the middle where there was more grip, but I felt safer because I was closer to hills and other things. So it was really my anxiety that took control, and it was no longer about actually being safe or comfortable. It was just my anxiety literally driving me. But I eventually started crisscrossing the road a little bit, so I would spend some more time in the middle of the road because, you know, hallways and middle open spaces still freak me out. So that was kind of the same idea. Once I finally realized that I could manage that, I got really excited because it meant I could take the bus for grade 12, which was amazing because that was even more independence. So eventually at places like home, when there's less open space and I felt more comfortable on my own and there weren't like people to distract me or loud noises that would scare me or anything, I began to hold on to objects as I went around my room, and I'd start with like smaller spaces with like more objects close together. I don't know if I mentioned this before, probably, but I had a row of chairs in the hallway of my cabin when I was practicing more over the summer before school had actually started. Like with my mom and stuff, like walking everywhere, like I would hold on to like a chair and the counter, so like as long as objects were closer to me, at least I was able to independently walk instead of having to rely completely on other people. It wasn't as fast as this sounds, but eventually moved on from objects to having at least a wall that I could lean on. And I remember I did take my cane like everywhere with me, but I would prefer having both hands on objects usually rather than a cane, because even that I had more control over, which was good, but not when I felt off balance, because if I felt off balance, the cane was off balance. And then it led to me eventually being more comfortable in smaller spaces where I was around objects even if I wasn't touching them. Could kind of just tap on objects without really holding on to them, but more out of like habit than anything. Everybody kind of consistently reminded me to practice and be walking constantly, because at least if I didn't feel like I was progressing or pushing my anxiety, I was still keeping my physicality up and eventually learning how to get more balance or getting muscle even just from doing basic walking task things. And just like getting the feel of it, which I needed a lot of for my anxiety. I do well when I'm alone, but I can't be entirely alone, which it gives me like no pressure, but there's help nearby if I need it. Even people just watching me or being in the room sometimes was like freaky, because I felt like the attention was on me even if they weren't really paying attention, if that makes any sense. And I never really feel ready, but sometimes I just feel a little braver than other times. And I do remember this one time at the mall where there was kind of like this empty room as you're going to exit the mall. I was really exhausted that day, and I had recently had a dream about the mall, so it was like I wasn't really there at all. And I'm just like, nothing is real. And then I just like walked across the floor because like I knew I wasn't in a dream, but I felt like I was so much that I felt like I could do anything. Maybe it's just like when you don't sleep for days and you're like, I am immortal. Which is really funny because I was just walking across the hall and then I kind of freaked out like halfway internally, but then I just kept going because I'm like, screw this, I don't care. My legs are carrying me and I'm not even trying. Then eventually, grade 12 year came. As I mentioned, I was still using my scooter, but I was able to like park it outside of classrooms and walk across the hall and into the classroom. Eventually, I managed to practice going up and down the ramp since our ramps at school have like rails on the sides, which I only did a few times for like a few minutes, a few lunches because it was really freaky. Like the only reason I chose the ramp to go up and down was because it had a railing, whereas like the wall didn't and it was a lot longer. It kind of got me into the mindset of challenging myself and pushing myself past the point of being afraid and anxious. And it was the best feeling of my life to finally be able to move and like squish in between smaller spaces rather than having to, you know, move everything out of the way and like move everything around to get my big wheelchair in a small space. Like, oh, it was so much better and I loved every minute of it and never took it for granted, honestly. Like, I still think about how nice it is to be able to freely move. I don't want to say like there was a flood, but like some sort of pipe broke in my school and I was using my scooter at that time, but since it's an electric scooter and I had parked it slightly out of the classroom, so there was water in a large area in a part of the hallway and my scooter happened to be in the water contaminated zone, and even if I wanted to use it I couldn't because like the elevator was broken or it was turned off because obviously that would be unsafe if there was like water in it and I would have to cross the water to get there. That's like not really okay. And I was on the top floor, which means I would have to walk down the hallway like all the way to the end and go down the stairs, get my stuff at my locker, and then go outside, which was a lot more walking than I was used to and a lot scarier, but I didn't have a choice. And it's so funny, I remember thinking like the day of or the day before or something like, I just really need something to push me or someone to push me, but it couldn't be voluntary because I wouldn't do it and I would get stopped by my anxiety. So like, praise the Lord, it's always the fires and the floods that save you, girl. So thankfully, I had a lovely friend in my art class. We're gonna call her Bunny because that's her nickname. She knew that I struggled with that and there was like 5 minutes till the end of the day and I'm like, oh my god, like I'm gonna miss the bus. So she was kind enough to help me get down the stairs. I was able to hold on to her and walk the frightening long-ass hallway down. Like, maybe I wasn't even holding on to her, I don't know, but she was definitely there to take my bag and stuff. I was so sweaty and I was so shaky and I had even less balance than I ever thought like that I would, basically. So at that point, I eventually began to take lunch, like I left class early, which I did anyways, but just a little bit more because I needed to actually walk and be less dependent on my scooter, but I think I used it for some classes because it was longer and harder to get to. And there would always be like really loud announcements that came on without like a warning or anything because they had to yell over all the children since it was lunchtime, but it would scare the crap out of me. But sometimes I felt better when I got scared because once I got scared it loosened my body up because I would tense so much from like having anxiety. Like I was tensing so much that like I couldn't bend it, so like I was barely even moving it and stepping it forward, which really just ended up making my knees and everything hurt more. But I figured it didn't matter as long as I got myself down that hallway, and sometimes I would have to sit and stop and breathe. It was usually worse getting back up after I had paused, even though it was so rare that I got through a full walk through that hallway without actually like sitting down. So eventually my anxiety lessened enough to the point that I am at now, and by now I mean like literally must be this month, start of June 2018. I'm now able to walk without a cane. I kind of went through this period of time where I felt okay if I was holding on to something, even if I didn't like have my cane in my hand, but as long as I was holding on to something, it was kind of like the idea of having like a cane in my hand. I don't know, anxiety's weird, nothing makes a logical sense. But it made sense to my anxiety. So just by carrying stuff back and forth, I kind of got used to not having my walking stick with me, and it was just really in the way, honestly. And then one day I just didn't bring it to school because I knew it wasn't helping and it would be in the way and like I'd survive because I'd done it before. I'm not saying I'm fully better and recovered now. Like, I'm still afraid of heights, and by heights I mean like the smallest amount of height. Like, standing on a chair counts as height, standing on a desk or a table. I absolutely hate saying like no or that I can't do something, but you know, anxiety's hard to live with, and like I feel like my safety is actually a concern when I'm standing on the table because, you know, I don't have enough balance and I'll fall off, which is just my anxiety rationalizing itself. But like, how am I supposed to concentrate on making something look good when I'm just trying to concentrate making myself feel okay enough to stand up? And glass or anything that I can like see down a level freaks me out, like a glass floor or something. I can't handle everything, like seeing everything at once. We have this little like kind of bridge thing in the top level of our school. Like, it's barred so you can see through it and like just around it. Like, I've forced myself to go across it a few times because I'm like, you know, once you get on there you can't get off and you just have to keep going. So I'm also afraid of escalators, which I thought I got over. Like, elevators I managed to get over, standing in, being in by myself even. Because I literally had to take them to avoid the stairs to go up and down at school. So, like, I can't figure out how to step on it so I like don't fall off, and it has to be like the right moment. Like, this is such a lame first world problem kind of fear, but like I don't understand it. I can function normally, but for the special circumstances, I guess I still struggle with. Like, I still can't jump. I don't know how to jump. Like, I don't have enough muscle to jump, I guess. I don't know. I haven't jumped in a long time. Still can't run. I'm lucky if I can fast walk. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. This was less about anxiety and more about just kind of like the next step of my recovery before I get into talking about kind of where I'm at now physically, concerns, things like that. Probably could have shoved that in here, but it's kind of too long already, so we'll see. Feel free to leave me a comment or have any questions, because I know anxiety doesn't make any sense, so I can try to respond in a way that makes some sense, or hopefully clarify some things if you're confused. And plus the timeline was a little messed up, so I'm sorry for that. But anyways, thank you for watching. See you later.